Welcome to Phone Contacts application creating register page. The sequence of events which generally happen on a register page are: user clicks on the register button on the login page. On the register page, he enters an email address, password, and a confirm password, then clicks on the register button. There is client-side validation which checks if the email format is correct and the passwords match. If there is an issue with the validation, we do not enable the register button and show appropriate message. If client-side validations are passed, we send data to server side and register the user. If registration is successful, we show the login page to the user where he can log in and start using the application. So there are 7 files which are needed to implement the sequence. The registration.html file, which is our main UI, main controller.js, which is our ng controller on the registration page, login service.js calls the server with the data we have from the register page. So these 3 files are on the UI side. On the server side, we have login controller.java, which accepts the request for registration and calls the authenticate service info, which uses user repository.java to persist the registration information, and with the help of login controller.java we get back to the user. Let's have a look how these files work together and the code. As soon as our application loads, the first page we see is home.jsp. Home.jsp has a tag called ngAmp PhoneBook app. This tag bootstraps AngularJS for our application, and also we have UI view. UI view indicates that we are using a state provider and partials will be substituted here as per the state. Let's have a look at the routing part we have configured using the state provider. In amp.js we have our application as a phone book app module, and in phonebookapp.js we have configured the routes using a state provider. So state provider stores states, home, register, data, error, and it gives us a template URL where we can give our partials or templates which will be substituted based on the state. So as soon as our application loads, the state is home and hence login.html is loaded. Let's have a look at login.html. So login.html has ng controller, which is main controller. It has a no validate tag which says that the page should ignore HTML5 validations, and also it has a register button. Once you click on the register button, our state changes to register, and hence we go to register.html. Register.html is controlled by main controller, and we have a field called username, password, and confirm password. The basic validation happens using pristine and invalid, which basically says that if the field has been touched and is invalid, email show a message. Similarly, on password field, we are checking if min length and max length comply to 8 and 12 characters. If not, we give a message for the same. If both the passwords are same, we enable our register button and on click send the data to registration method, which is present in the main controller. Let's have a look at the main controller. So main controller is a controller for our application. It uses different services. One of them is the login service. It has login, confirm password, and a registration method or a function. Once we click register button on the front end, the data of name and password is encapsulated in the data object, and we call the register method of the login service with our data. This gives us a deferred object, and if successful, we get a response from the server which says valid true or valid false. If it is valid true, we send the user on the login page, else we go to an error page. Let's have a look at the login service. Login service uses HTTP and queue service. It has two methods, login and register. When the register method is called with the data we pass from the front end, the queue service gives us a deferred object which makes sure that the thread is not blocked because of the AJAX request. Once we get a successful result, we resolve the deferred and give the data back, else we reject the deferred in case of an error. So that was the client side part. Let's have a look at the server side. On the server side, we have a login controller which caters to our register request. So register request is a post request, and using the HTTP interpreter we pass the data into the user object. We call the authenticate services register user method with a user. If everything goes fine, we have a successful result or success is true, we send a valid true to the client. Let's have a look at the authenticate services register user implementation. In the register user method, we take the user, get its password and create a hash using bcrypt, which is there in the security package of Spring Framework. We take the hash, set the hash on the user's password. We set a role as a normal user, which might come in handy after some time. And we save the user. Once everything goes fine, we send a true to the controller. User repository extends JP repository. It takes a user and long, which is basically indicating the type of our ID. The JPA repository gives us some methods, and one of them is save. Hence we get an automatic implementation by extending the repository. The table in which we save this data has an ID, email, password, and the role. The password is our hash, provides certain level of security in case there is a database compromise. So that's how we register a user. See you in the next lesson.